Alright, I want to do a quick update on kind of the firewood situation and kind of show you, I guess, like the aftermath of doing milling. So what you have here, mostly, there's a little bit underneath that's not from this, but the majority of this here is from milling what we need for the picnic shelter. So we have our 6x6s, our 4x6s, and then we've been using the sycamore here for the 1x material that will be the under part of the on the rafters. So I'll go over and show you what that looks like on the milled material, but this is kind of what we have left over after we've gotten done milling. If you haven't been following along, here's kind of what that looks like. So here's our 1x material from our sycamores, and then all of our material of red oak. So our 4x6s down there, our 6x6s there, and then our 4x10s that will be the main beam across the top. So that's kind of what we have, and that was from probably about 5 trees. I don't have an exact total on that, but there's a couple trees there and that, so maybe 2 or 3, and that's probably about 2, and then that one was 1 there. So several there, and then have about 3 or 4 sycamores to get what we needed here. Could have done it in probably a little bit less, but had a couple smaller logs that we wanted to go ahead and get milled up, so we used that. So that's kind of the goal of doing our milling. So this is what we got out of that. I'll hop back over to kind of the scrap wood. So even before we started doing the sawmill stuff, I was trying to sell some firewood just because we had so much wood around, and that just hasn't changed. It's kind of gotten almost worse in a sense because now we have all of this wood here that, while it's not a full tree, there's still a lot of wood there. So that's why we created the rack, to be able to put wood on, get it cut into about 16-inch pieces, and then built the vertical splitter to be able to do like bag firewood. So that's kind of the goal there. And most of this wood here, like I said, is from just this session. So it's about probably 10 trees in total, but there's a lot of good red oak, some sycamore in there, and then back there's the poplar, and it'll probably get taken away to a buddy's house again. I got most of it cleaned up, just didn't get all of it. I'm going to try making a dent on this pile here over the next couple days to try to get this whittled back down and get some usable wood out of this. Notice I have some things moved around. So right now I'm trying to get a propane tank set back here, so it goes back there. So to do that, I had to move the log splitter and everything from this location, so I just moved it over here. Been working on what I had in totes, getting it split up. So some nice red oak, a little bit of walnut, and some beech in that. So have that all split up. That's ready to go out back and let it start to dry. So have the splitter over here, and then basically have this splitter, which is essentially just using it for the engine with the pump. So have my hoses connected up with quick connect. So worked on this for a couple days, got everything I had cut up in totes, just into pieces like this. Got it all split up, so I need to start working on that again. This stuff's kind of in the way, obviously, of that, so I'm going to get this stuff moved, just kind of out of the way, so I can start getting this stuff over and get it cut into pieces and fill up a few totes to have ready so that I can start splitting again and kind of get ahead on the firewood, so it has time to dry before I sell it. Most of this stuff has been sitting for a little while anyway, so it doesn't take a long time, and I cut it pretty small, so it didn't take a long time to dry, so that's a good benefit there. But get some of this stuff moved out of the way, need to switch the 62 back over to the fork, so I'll get that done, and then just start moving stuff around. And then I have a panel hook on that one on the splitter, so I'll put that back on so we can move it down the hill just a little bit, because it's in the way for some of the longer pieces there. So get some of this stuff situated and work on getting cut, but kind of show the aftermath of doing some milling, and then show kind of what this looks like in totes, and see how far I get through some of that. And then basically one of these totes filled up with non-split firewood equals about a split one, give or take a little bit depending on how tightly it's packed in there, but it's typically pretty close. So set up a little bit of time lapse while I get stuff resituated, and get stuff moved around so that I can start getting that cut. Alright, so I got a couple of totes set up over here. I'm ready to put some wood in. So this won't be, I won't do a whole lot of video of like how to use it. I've done a couple of those in the past. Basically, just quick summary, put a handful of pieces on there. Try to put some of the smaller stuff in the back and then the bigger stuff up front. That kind of helps hold it down whenever you're sawing. It doesn't want to pick up into the saw. The bigger stuff will kind of hold that. So try to get some of the smaller things in the back, and anything that's flat, try to get that down first, get it up against the back, and then take one of the bigger end pieces and try to cap that off to kind of hold everything down, and then start at this end. If anything sticks past, just kind of mark off 16 inches, cut, and then from there, just going on this side of each one, holding the saw up against and kind of cutting. So far this has held up fairly well. Nothing fancy, just these are actually some of our screed boards and boards from the saw shack, from when we did the concrete, so they have a little bit of concrete and stuff like that on them. So didn't want to necessarily use them for other stuff, but just scraps that we had of 2x6, put them together, and then ran some pieces on the outside to hold it together. It's not the most stable thing. We could obviously go through and do a little bit better job if we really wanted to make it super sturdy and you know, make something bigger like some other people have, and may do that in the future, but for now this is working out fairly well. In the future, it would be nice to get kind of a bigger one to where whenever we get wood set up or get wood done, instead of putting it on the ground, I could put it directly on a device like that. So it's just ready to go, and kind of hopefully take out some of this step of having to handle it by hand to get it on the rack. So we'll see in the future about doing something like that, but for now, have this, and it's been working out fairly well. So makes the cuts much more efficiently, just, you know, that, and then consistency as well. So anyway, start getting through some of this sycamore and red oak and get it chopped up. So switch you guys over to time lapse, do some time lapse, and may do some video in between, but it's a lot of kind of getting stuff put on, cutting, and then stacking. So not super interesting, but see kind of the final result over the next couple days whenever I work on this, to see like how much of this I can get through and how many totes it fills up. So come along as I work on getting some of this stuff cut up. So to start with, go ahead and get this tote moved out. So it's some stuff that I had split up and just needs to be stored. So just kind of get it put over there to the side so that it can dry up a little bit, and then take that out back to dry back there, as I mentioned. So go ahead and get all the hoses unhooked and just move this out of the way. So as I mentioned, have the propane tank that needs to be set, so kind of have stuff in unusual spots right now. So go ahead and have this, the splitter slash the power for the vertical splitter, just get it moved down a little bit, cleaned up a spot here and then able to set that vertical splitter just back this direction so it's out of the way for now. So just able to use the forks and get it picked up with the 62. It does a really good job. We have just enough room in between to where it can pick it up and isn't too precarious. And while I have the 2150 going, I go ahead and use it just to scrape a little bit of that off and push it into the green hole we have going here. Getting a couple totes ready here. Easier to get them moved with the 62 while I have it going, and just kind of get those prepped, get everything cleaned out from the bottom. Not that it's a huge deal, but that way you don't have the leaves and everything in the bottom kind of sitting and holding water while this sits in there waiting for me to get around to splitting it. Depending on how the winter is, kind of varies how much splitting I get done. You know, if it's a fairly mild winter, then you know, I can spend more time out doing it. If it's pretty harsh, where it's either really cold or you know, if we get a lot of rain or something, then obviously don't get out as much to work on that. Now is definitely a much nicer time typically to work on some of this kind of stuff, just because whenever it's really hot out, it's not near as enjoyable. I'd rather be in a flannel and a sweatshirt than not. So I had several projects go on today, so I didn't get as much of this done as I'd like, but try to get some of it caught up, just because it is one of those things, as you mill, you end up with a lot of this as a byproduct, and try to salvage as much of it as possible. It does work really well for my bagging firewood business, and it's just one of those things, trying to keep up with it when time allows. So I'll get into a lot of this bigger stuff here that I think had some splits in it and stuff that we just didn't want to, you know, wasn't suitable. It either had lots of splits or something, so ended up just being firewood. So this really big piece, instead of trying to set it on, I just measure and cut it whenever it's being held by the backhoe. The other stuff I go ahead and try to set on the stand, so I can cut it at a, you know, here in a minute. I can get several of these kind of on there and use the backhoe is much easier. And then these pieces, just getting them cleaned up, and they're some big pieces of red oak, so they'll be really good firewood. So I'll do a little bit of real time for you here, just getting some of this stuff cut up. So by stacking it on here, you can definitely get a lot more at one time than just doing one by one with the backhoe, like I'd kind of done in the past. But it is a little bit of a slow process, and then going through and getting all this picked up. So get kind of an idea of the real speed of cutting through, and this was a lot of the red oak that was pretty big, so it cut through a little bit slower than some of the other stuff. And I think it's about time for a chain on that saw. So it's kind of more toward the end of its saw life, but for cutting some of this stuff, it's typically not that big a deal if it's super sharp. And then just another look here at some, silly backhoe tricks. So just trying to get some of this stuff picked up, get some of these bigger pieces off the top here, just so that I can then get to the smaller stuff. So able to just reach some of that, or just outside, so I have to move this over just a little bit. So I'll just use the backhoe to kind of pick the back of the machine up and scooch over, just so I can get that piece that's on top. It's one of the bigger pieces, so I want to get it cut. So get moved over enough here that I can finally reach that. So kind of a combination of using the thumb, which you can't see here, at this angle, and then just the back of the bucket to get that picked up, and swing you around here a little bit so you can kind of see putting it on. Didn't get you swung quite enough, but kind of get an idea of getting that put on or picked up. It's one of the big pieces, so I go ahead and not put it on and just cut it up as is. Alright, starting to make a little bit of a dent here finally. So that's 2 totes, pretty full. So have those loaded up. You need to find some place to set those aside, just so that I can get 2 more in here, keep going through this stuff. I got the pretty big pieces, a pretty big piece of red oak, but then also 2 big pieces of sycamore that were in here. So I got those picked up with a backhoe and got those chopped into pieces and put them in that tote. So most of this stuff now, smaller stuff, should be a little bit more manageable. Looks like at the very bottom there's some big pieces again, so once I get down through some of this stuff, I'll have that. And it looks like we did cut a cherry in there, so there's a little bit of cherry right in the center there. So once I kind of get some of this cleaned up, I'll get to that cherry and start mixing it in as well. So 2 more totes and should have a pretty good dent on this. Like I said, most of the stuff is pretty small now, so it'll start to disappear pretty quick because there's a lot of air in there. So be able to get that cleaned up, and have 2 more baskets of soon to be firewood, so let it sit for a little bit and then come back around to it and get it split up so that it's ready to dry and then sell. So this stuff is pretty green, so normally my totes sit anywhere from 3 to 6 months kind of to sit and dry, which for a lot of the stuff, how small I make it and that it's been sitting already kind of open like this, normally isn't too bad. But some of this bigger stuff that is pretty green, it may take a little bit longer. So I do have a moisture meter, so I'll kind of check it periodically just to kind of make sure that I'm kind of getting into a good range before I'm selling it. So on to working on getting some of this up next after I move these 2 totes around. Alright, so I've had several other projects going today that I've been trying to run around and do. So I haven't gotten as much done over here as I was hoping. I have about half a tote full and gotten through a little bit more of this, getting down into some older stuff down here, and then some of the sycamore that spilled over the back. So getting through a lot of this though, and a couple more bigger pieces, and then a little bit of that cherry left. So I think the rest of this will go pretty quick, and then I'll be able to kind of get everything cleaned up in this area a little bit. Kind of have some pieces of wood and like a piece of walnut and stuff kind of mixed in here, kind of get it separated out, and kind of get it cleaned up some. Thank you for watching us kind of get back to the basics of just cutting up some firewood and then working on splitting it here after a bit. So thank you for watching. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.